Karen Reed and her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, were bar hopping on a snowy night in Massachusetts. At the end of the night, they were invited to a house party at the home of a fellow officer in Canton, Massachusetts. When Karen and John arrived, Karen did not exit the car. John did. From that point forward, there are two very different versions of what happened. Prosecutors say Karen was mad at John and purposely struck him with her car and left him on the ground to die in the snow. But Karen and her defense team say John went to the party. Something terrible happened inside the house, and his body was placed outside where he was found dead the next morning. Karen has been charged with murder but claims she is the victim of a big cover-up by police. Meanwhile, both inside and outside the courthouse, things have been getting very tense. A local blogger who goes by the name Turtle Boy organized a protest outside the courthouse to support Karen. Tonight, we speak live with Turtle Boy, then we'll bring in the attorneys for Karen Reed as we investigate the death of John O'Keefe and the allegations of a police cover-up.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you with us. Now, Karen Reed, like every other criminal defendant, when they're charged, is presumed innocent. And it's no different in this case. But in many of the cases we cover on Court TV, right, the presumption of innocence applies, but you know, and I think sometimes in the back of my mind, yeah, they're presumed innocent, but come on. We've from the evidence that's been released already, it doesn't look really good for that defendant. This case is a little different, and potentially a lot different, depending upon how the evidence plays out, because there are two very different versions of what happened that night in Canton, Massachusetts. Now, you know we rarely hear from criminal defendants. They don't usually testify at trial, and they usually don't talk before the trial. But in this case, that's not the case. I mean, she has spoken. Karen Reed has spoken out. And even though we rarely hear from defendants, we've heard from this one. So that makes this case a little bit different because the defense has an alternative story about what happened here. You know, many times the defense is, oh, they can't prove their case. Period, end of story. They don't have the evidence. And as we know in our system, the defense doesn't have to prove anything. They don't have to put one witness on the stand. They don't even have to come up with an alternative theory as to what happened in the case. It's up to the prosecution to prove it beyond any and all reasonable doubt. But again, here, things are different. There's an alleged police cover-up here. That John O'Keefe went inside that house, which was a party with fellow officers and family members, etc. And the allegation is that something happened in there. And that's all being covered up now. So that is a bold move. Again, rarely do you see this play out, especially before a trial, but the defense has been very, very vocal about it. And how would you react? And this is, and I'm not presuming this case is one way or the other, but I always think about this. If I've been wrongfully accused of something, would I just sit back and wait for my moment in court? Or would I literally be screaming on the steps of the courthouse so everyone knew that I was innocent? I think I would choose the latter. That's the way I would react. Now, someone could be guilty and react that way, but if I was innocent, knowing myself, despite what my attorneys may or may not be telling me, I think I'd be saying that, especially if I was accused of murdering someone that I cared about, someone that I loved. And that's the allegation in this case, although prosecutors are saying they're in the middle of this big fight and this breakup, etc. So here's the thing that has happened in this case, which again is another rare development, is that Karen Reed has supporters who've shown up in large numbers in this usually sleepy courthouse in Norfolk County in Dedham, Massachusetts. I've been to that courthouse. There's not a million courtrooms there. I think there's actually 2 in the building. And the one where this case is being held is the very historical Sacco and Vanzetti courtroom. Not much happens in Dedham. I mean, it's not like there's a bunch of people. showing up. Like if you're in the middle of a big city, you could always find people that might show up at a courtroom. Here you have to be there for a specific reason. And that's what happened, large numbers. And they are clearly supporting Karen Read and think something is going on here that is terribly, terribly wrong. Again, at the outset, we want to investigate and get as much information as possible on the show as we continue to track this case as it moves towards a trial. I don't know. I haven't seen all the evidence. I haven't heard all the evidence. She's presumed innocent, but anyone that the defense is pointing the finger at is also presumed innocent, right? That's the way our system works. But tonight we're going to try to figure out what exactly is going on in that town. And for me, it begins with this outpouring of support for Karen Read. Take a look at what is actually happening in Dedham, Massachusetts, when there are hearings in this case. Take a look.
We're right here today, Jim McDermott, and we're not going to be quiet. We got it. Imagine one day you wake up and your daughter is telling you, Dad, they're telling me I killed John. They're telling me I killed John and I'm scared. And then you go, you're involuntarily sectioned for 5 hours in Brockton at the same hospital, I believe, that the boyfriend has just pronounced dead in. And you're sectioned there against your will. And then you were brought back to One Meadows Avenue, where the people who were kissing your when you were helping out their niece and nephew for the last 2 years, helping raise them. Those people are suddenly turning on you and telling you that you killed your boyfriend who you love dearly. So we are here because the institutions that we are supposed to trust, the police and the district attorney's office, have completely failed us. They've completely failed not only Karen Read, and not only John O'Keefe, but they have failed all of us.
I mean, it's an unbelievable scene. I mean, it's reminiscent of the cheering that we heard at Johnny Depp's trial when I was there. And this is not a Hollywood star. This is an accused murderer getting a standing ovation as she enters the courtroom. What is going on out there? Well, the man who organized all of that is joining us tonight, our special guest, blogger, social media personality, owner of TB Daily News, and the man who organized the Karen Read protest. He's joining us tonight, apparently from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Aidan Carney, also known as Turtle Boy. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Vinny.
Let me start here. Aidan, Turtle Boy, what do you prefer?
You can call me Turtle Boy.
Okay, I'll go with Turtle Boy, not a problem. I understand. That's what everybody calls you. So let me start here.
Yeah, I'm used to it now.
Yeah, so the first question, how did you get involved in this case? Like, you were a sports guy, weren't you?
No. I mean, I started the blog about 10 years ago about sports, and nobody really cared about sports. So I started really getting into investigative stories, and I became an award-winning journalist along the way. And I've built a pretty large following in the New England area. And so when stories like this happen, I gravitate towards them. But this particular story is by far the biggest and longest story we've ever done. We're on part like 97 at this point. I don't know how many hours of YouTube streaming shows we've done about this, but it just seems like it never ends. And, the following has obviously grown significantly as a result of this because the story is so mesmerizing. It just every day there's something new about the story that you couldn't be more shocked than the previous day. And then like yesterday, we find out that Michael Proctor, the detective in this, made up a fake company that does not exist and wrote in his report that they plowed Fairview Road, a company that does not exist, in order to avoid interviewing the actual plow driver who I interviewed yesterday. And as it turns out, he went by 34 Fairview Road and he reported seeing no body. He said that he would have seen a body if it was lying there. He's a 217-pound man, 10 feet from the curb. He said there was no body on the ground. And the lead investigator for the Massachusetts State Police, who is good friends with the people who are believed to be the perpetrators of this horrible, horrific crime, has known these people his entire life. He lives in Canton, and he never interviewed the only eyewitness who can definitively say that there was no body on the ground on 34 Fairview Road that night.
And again, as I said off the top, Karen Reed presumed innocent. Everyone that the defense is accusing is presumed innocent as well. But we know this way this is playing out, and the defense is going to make these same accusations that you're making. That obviously we have no idea what the truth is, and hopefully everything comes out inside the courtroom, and the jury tells us eventually. So you have no personal connection to Karen Reed.
No, I didn't know who she was before this. I mean, I briefly saw it in the news when it happened last year and didn't pursue it. I thought it was a horrible tragedy when it happened, like a horrible accident. I think a lot of people assume that. And then what really caught my attention was a court filing in April about the Google search. Like that was what caught my attention. And I looked into it and I read Alan Jackson's 94-page affidavit accompanied by Richard Forensic what his exact title is, Richard Green. He's basically a data nerd. He looks through your phone, finds things you deleted. I read it all, and every page I read further, my jaw just dropped. And I said, this can't be happening. How is this real? And I assumed, like, they have a woman Googling at 2:27 in the morning who was inside that house, how long to die in cold, claiming that John O'Keefe never came in that house. So why would you Google that if you thought John O'Keefe was home in his bed, right? So when I saw that, I'm like, well, this is game over, obviously. They have to drop the charges. This isn't, you trust the institutions, right? Like the district attorney's office can't be unethical and corrupt. They know this is beyond reasonable doubt.
Let me ask you this, like, because, you're coming out and protesting, right? And you're organizing all these folks coming down there, making a lot of noise locally, challenging people, getting in their faces, et cetera, coming in and out of the courtroom. Have you always been skeptical of police? Is that where sort of you come from?
No.
You question the police as sort of a social activist?
No, I mean, if you look back on older stories I've written, I'm a right-wing guy. Like I'm a law and order guy. I'm a back the blue guy historically. During the BLM riots in 2020, we were very pro-police during that whole thing and didn't think that all police were like Derek Chauvin and just wanted to, and so to have this happen, it feels like a betrayal of the trust that you put in these institutions. To have the cowardly, and that's what they are, the cowards of Canton, the cowardly Canton police, who first got to that scene at 6 a.m. and did not find a single piece of taillight or a shoe. And then 12 hours later, when the state police took over, boom, they found taillight everywhere and a gigantic shoe, which somehow the Canton police missed. Now, if I'm the Canton police chief, I say, I stand by my men. And I say, look, my guys are competent. They would have seen that. Those were not there. But the cowards of Canton remain silent. And not a single officer in that entire department has any fortitude up and say, no. We need to put a stop to this. An innocent woman, you are trying to put her in a box for the rest of your life while her killers remain free in this town that we live in.
So are you from Canton? I know you're in Cape Cod tonight. Are you on vacation?
No, I'm on vacation. Yeah, it's the last night of vacation.
That's what I figured.
I'm from a little town called Holden, right next to Worcester, second biggest city in New England. So it's about an hour away. So I go to Canton a lot these days.
So let me ask you this. You've got a lot of followers. The people that showed up at that courthouse, those protesters, are they local folks from Canton, or are they followers of yours who have gotten, entrenched and committed to the story the way you have, who showed up from all over? Because I'm wondering, are we looking at potential jurors here?
Well, I don't know how many live in Norfolk County. There's a lot of counties, and the county lines are kind of weirdly drawn in Massachusetts. But I doubt, I would probably say 5 to 10% of that crowd is a potential juror because they live in Norfolk County. Obviously, they would not be picked for the jury if they had jury duty that day based on their activism. But, I would say like a very small percentage of that crowd is actually from Canton. I mean, these are people who are so outraged. I've never written a story like this that has gotten so much interest and outrage from people. Like, if I died tomorrow, this movement would go on. People would keep protesting. I'm kind of like the leader of the movement, but it's taken on a life of its own. Yesterday at the Canton Town Select Board, one of the alleged perpetrators is on the Board of Selectmen, and a lot of Canton folks just showed up and began demanding he resign. I didn't urge anyone to do that. This is taken on a life of its own because it is that outrageous. I am not a conspiracy theorist.
Let me ask you this.
Let
me ask you this. Now, there were cheers for Karen Reed on the way into the courtroom, but there were boos for other folks who were walking in. Who was that, and why was the crowd booing people who were walking in? I mean, because was it the prosecution?
No,
was it an officer? Who was it?
That's Carl Dougal. He's a local moron. He's a Boston detective. He is the only member of the Boston Police Department that believes Karen Reed did this. Normally, when a cop gets killed, police officers go to court.
So again, I mean, you called him a name. I just got to be careful with that.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. I get it. That's the way your show usually goes. Just tone it down just a little bit tonight in terms of the name calling. Because I don't know him. He could be a bright guy, could be the best guy in the world. I don't know. You have a problem with him. But he's from the Boston PD is what you're saying?
He's a Boston police detective.
Okay, so this took place in Canton, but the officers at the party and John O'Keefe and everyone else is really connected to Boston PD?
I mean, the only other person connected to Boston PD in that house is the homeowner, Brian Albert.
Okay.
He has a brother who's on Canton Police. He's got another brother on the Board of Selectmen. But, this took place in Canton. It just happened to be two Boston cops in a Boston suburb, like not Boston itself. And so Carl is a former coworker of his. And
wasn't that John O'Keefe's friend? Isn't that his friend?
Yeah, but a lot of John O'Keefe's friends are sitting on Karen Reed's side, including some of John's ex-girlfriends. Imagine that. Like ex-girlfriends aren't supposed to like the latest girlfriend. But they're sitting there with Karen on her side.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Let me ask you this. I mean, his friend is dead, right? And he believes what he believes. Do you think he's at fault here for believing what he believes at this point?
Yes. So first of all, I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nobody with who is that ignorant should be in charge of investigating any crimes at all. The fact that he's a Boston police detective makes me wonder how many times he has falsely arrested people for crimes that they did not commit. If he just bases this all on a hunch.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering what this scene is going to be like at the courthouse, right, for folks who are coming in. How about John O'Keefe's family?
Well, you know why we boo him, Vinny? Because anybody who is down there sitting on the prosecution side is knowingly supporting a sham. And every minute wasted on this sham prosecution of Karen Reed is a minute longer that the real people who killed John O'Keefe are out there free. The FBI is investigating this. There's going to be indictments. There will be no trial in this. That is one thing I can almost guarantee you. There will be no trial. There will be indictments probably within the next 3 to 6 months would be my ballpark estimate.
All right. Turtle Boy, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you coming on, and Hope perhaps you'll come back in the future as we continue to track this case, things develop. And the only thing I would say from my perspective, just having covered trials for years, is that for family members and stuff going through, and it's their loved one, their friend that's on, that is the victim in the case, just a little, it's tough for them. It's really a difficult spot for them emotionally. Like, it's even tough for me just to sometimes approach them.
Right. I just want to make it clear that we didn't boo his mother or anything like that. I actually said, no, we're not going to say anything to his mother. I wanted to be very clear with that.
Okay.
Even his brother, I said the same thing. We're not going to do that. But Carl, it's a long story.
I know it's a long.
You don't like Carl.
And you can watch all of Turtle Boy's work on his blog, and you'll understand exactly what he's talking about tonight. But we appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Vinny.
Thanks so much. All right. I'm telling you, things are tense in the courtroom, out of the courtroom. Up next, we're going to speak with Karen Read's attorneys. Plus, coming up next hour.
In the Bahamas, a love triangle and divorce turned into an alleged murder-for-hire plot. Lindsay Shiver is accused of cheating on her husband, then soliciting a third man with her lover to kill her husband, Robert. We are live in the Bahamas as the suspects are released on bond.
Lindsay, any comment for your family back home, your boys? How about Robert? Any message for Robert?
A man married 6 times. 4 of his wives died under mysterious circumstances.
Eccentric widower Thomas Randolph.
Charged with the murders of his wife and the man he allegedly paid to kill her.
A 2017 conviction overturned.
The plan between Mr. Miller and Mr. Randolph was to kill Sharon.
Now he faces a jury once again.
The Widower Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
So there's a cover-up, and it's so easy to cover up.
Your guess is as good as mine. That's what we're trying to figure out. That's exactly what we're trying to figure out. The Massachusetts, well, certainly the Massachusetts State Police is involved. There are people that were in that house that are involved. Brian Albert is involved. Jennifer McCabe is involved. The rest of the folks that were in that house, there's some level of involvement by every one of them.
So you have a Boston police officer who's found dead on the lawn of a Boston police officer's home. Why was there no search warrant done of that home? Why was there no search for forensic evidence that he entered that home? That would have been done if it were you or me who owned that home.
The dog has been gotten rid of. Got rid of the evidence in the basement. Got rid of the house, the crime scene itself. Your Honor, I would submit to the court that evidence is literally being destroyed right under our nose.
It makes no sense to me. I think it's going to make no sense to a jury.
And I've been saying this from the first time we covered this story, that this defense is extremely aggressive, very competent, and it continues. It absolutely continues. Let me bring in our guest joining us in Boston, Massachusetts. Karen Read's defense attorney, David Yanetti's with us. Also joining us, he's on the other coast in Los Angeles, California. High-profile attorney. You've seen him many times on Court TV, co-counsel for Karen Read, Alan Jackson. Alan, great to see you again. Great to see you, David, tonight. Let's begin here with something that I'm going to actually say Turtle Boy told us in the prior segment about this snowplow driver. David, how significant is this? Have you spoken to the snowplow driver? And is this the key witness for the defense?
Well, I would say it's one of the key witnesses for the defense. This is no less than bombshell evidence, Vinny. By the prosecution's theory of the case, my client supposedly struck John O'Keefe with her vehicle and left him on the lawn of Brian Albert's property. That would have been at 12:30 a.m. So when the snowplow driver went by to make a pass at 2:30 a.m., when he's checking the sides of the roads to make sure there's nobody there, not even an animal there that he would potentially hit, and he confirms that no body was on that lawn, in our view, this is ball game over.
All right, let me ask you about the other big thing, again, that Turtle Boy mentioned that that really struck him and struck all of us here at Court TV was this Google search. Now, is this going to be a battle inside the courtroom as to when this search was done about a body dying in the cold? Is the prosecution saying this is after the body is discovered, and you guys are saying before? Is this going to be a battle of the experts? What's the status of all this, Alan? Because to me, this is crucial, right?
It is crucial, but to have a battle, you have to have two sides. There are no two sides to this. This doesn't come from us. This comes from Apple. The time of the search comes from Apple core data. In other words, it's not something that can be manipulated. It's not something that needs to be interpreted. It's something that just exists in the world as we know it. The Apple Cocoa core data indicates, or the core time indicates exactly what time that Google search occurred. That time was at 2:27 and 40 seconds in the morning on January 29th. That's 3.5 hours before John O'Keefe's body was found. Why is Jennifer McCabe, one of the parties that was inside the house that night, the sister-in-law of Brian Albert, why was she Google searching? How long does it take for a human body to die in the cold? That's a question that we have posed to the prosecution over and over and over. And the Commonwealth doesn't have an answer for it. So they simply say, oh, well, we think maybe they got the time wrong. Except we didn't come up with the time. And we're using data from Celebrite, which is the exact same program that the prosecution relies on. Massachusetts prosecutors across the state and prosecutors across the country have relied on for not just years, for decades, to establish guilt and in some cases to establish that the defense uses to establish innocence. It's unfathomable that the prosecution would take the position, well, that timestamp is not right. We know it's right, and that also, to echo what David said, that is another aspect of this case that establishes this game is over. We know what happened inside the house. We just don't know who struck the fatal blow. And the prosecution, it doesn't seem to want to get to the bottom of it. We're trying to.
All right, let's get to the shattered tail light. As Alan was speaking, David, we were watching video, and that's Karen Reed's car, right? And what's the significance of this video? And is this where the tail light was actually shattered from your perspective, not during the murder of John O'Keefe?
Yes, there's no doubt that's when the tail light was shattered. And by the way, that's at 5 in the morning, 4.5 hours after it was supposedly shattered the night before. The taillight was intact when she left Brian Albert's house. She came home, and this was Karen leaving to begin the frantic search for John O'Keefe. Now, I don't know that you can see it from the video that you have there, but there is no doubt that when that SUV comes into contact with what is John O'Keefe's vehicle parked in the driveway, you can see that rear tire move forward. Yeah. It rotates, and you also see the light shatter from the taillight being broken. So their theory is that this happened 4.5 hours earlier. We can prove it happened 4.5 hours later.
Okay, how about this, Alan Jackson? Is there going to be a paramedic coming inside that courtroom and saying that they heard Karen Reed, your client, say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I don't know who's going to come to court and say what. I mean, it's very easy for the prosecution to stand up and make all these sort of grandiose claims, these fanciful claims about what they think the evidence is going to show. I can tell you this. There's going to be no reasonable evidence that she ever confessed to hitting John O'Keefe, because she didn't. Could she have questioned, oh, my God, could I have hit him? That's a reasonable thing for a person in that circumstance to say. It's a reasonable thing for a person in that circumstance to wonder. She's sitting there. The last time she saw John O'Keefe alive, he was stepping out of her car, walking up a driveway, walking into a doorway in a house that she wasn't familiar with. And several hours later, she sees his body outside in the cold, dying, right, taking his last breath, and she's trying to jump on him, make sure that he gets some warmth in his body. She's trying to give him CPR. Keep in mind, she was absolutely, utterly frantic at that point. Could she have said, Could I have hit him? That is a reasonable thing for her to have said. It's a reasonable thing for someone to have overheard. But keep in mind, I don't know what the paramedic's ultimately going to say. Everything that comes from that paramedic is coming through someone that's involved in John O'Keefe's murder. In other words, Jennifer McCabe, others inside the house, they have a connection. They have a relationship with that very same firefighter or that paramedic. That's why this is all very suspect. If the only thing the Commonwealth has to rely on is some supposed statement, oh my gosh, could I have hit him? That's not enough to base a prosecution on. That's desperation. When every single other piece of physical and circumstantial and direct evidence points the exact opposite direction, to the Alberts, to the McCabes, to the people that were inside that house.
David, let me ask you this. We covered the Alec Murdaugh trial, and there was testimony about the movement of cell phones, and it was very specific. Like, it wasn't like it's generally in that area. They were able to track the movement of the cell phone. The prosecution painted a picture of Alec Murdaugh running around the house, pacing around the house, very specific location. What does the cell phone of John O'Keefe tell us in this case? Because to me, if it's all these hours or an hour that he's alive, is he moving in the house? Can you get that type of location information? Are there searches done? Are there calls, text messages? Is he looking things up? Is anything like that happening on his cell phone, which I believe was found underneath his body?
Correct. And that in itself is curious that it was underneath his body and not in a pocket. But the answer to your question is two-part. Number one, Alan and I have been fighting tooth and nail to get all of the cell phone data that we can. And guess who has fought us back to prevent us from getting that information? It's been the prosecution. They have fought us when we have tried to get the cell phone data of everybody in that house, which they should want to get to the truth.
But John O'Keefe is the key, right? I mean, isn't the tech? I mean, we saw it in the Murdaugh trial. This technology can be extremely precise in the location of these cell phones and the movements.
Right. So that's the second answer, or the second part of my answer. That the Apple Health data that Alan referenced earlier shows that he did walk, I think, approximately 80 steps and went up and down approximately 3 flights of stairs. You don't do that by getting out of a vehicle and being struck by the vehicle. And I think Alan had said at one point, you know, what did he do? Did he do laps around the car and start jumping up and down and then got hit? It's fanciful. It's ridiculous. We know he went in that house. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there was a witness that saw Karen alone in the vehicle with her hands 10 and 2 on the wheel, and nobody else was around her. This prosecution is a walking zombie. It's dead. The DA's office just doesn't know it yet, or they refuse to acknowledge it.
And Vinny, it's important to understand, if I could just dovetail onto David's point.
We have about 30 seconds, that's all. I'm sorry.
I can do it in 15. The prosecution's entire theory is John O'Keefe stepped out of the passenger side of the vehicle, he was hit, and he was disabled. Done. There would be no movement from his cell phone. You're exactly right. The Apple Health data is extraordinarily precise. It shows him taking 88 steps. It also shows him going up and down 3 flights of stairs at the 3-story house, and then taking 30 steps after that at 12:31 a.m. At or after 12:31 a.m. If he stepped out of the car and was hit, the Apple Health data would show absolutely nothing whatsoever. When the prosecution is asked by David and myself, explain that, they simply say, we have no explanation.
All right.
It can't be relied on. Every time they don't like an answer, they say it can't be relied on.
Alan Jackson, David Yannetti, I know you're super busy. We really appreciate your time tonight, giving us much more insight into this case, and hopefully we'll speak again.
It's an important case, Vinny. Thanks so for the time.
Absolutely. All right. Whew. Up next, folks, we're gonna get an independent opinion on all of this. We're gonna bring in one of Massachusetts' finest attorneys and legal minds next.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Couldn't keep my life straight.
That demanded our attention.
They were killed by their own children.
That challenged the legal system and ourselves.
How in the world can a mother wait 30 days before reporting her child missing?
These are the trials that became legendary. And now you can relive them all in one place. Court TV Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in his blood. I was the only one trying to save his life.
Okay, so this hour we've heard from Turtle Boy, who, along with his followers, believes that Karen Read is falsely accused. The attorneys who tried to laid out some very compelling evidence. So I wanted to bring in like an independent mind to take a look at all this. And you're in Massachusetts, there's only one place you go. Let's bring in our guest. Joining us in Boston, Massachusetts, former child abuse prosecutor, law professor at New England Law, Wendy Murphy, back with us. Wendy, great to see you.
You too, Vinny.
All right, so what's happening there in Canton, Massachusetts, in Dedham, Massachusetts? What are your thoughts about this? Is it possible that there is some sort of a police cover-up here?
You know, that's the big question, and I know how the issue has been framed. Either there's a big cover-up or she's guilty of murder, and I kind of come down in the middle. You know, my feeling from the beginning of this case was that she probably did hit him. He banged his head on the driveway. She didn't plan to hit him. She didn't want to kill him. And that he was covered by the snow, which is why no one found him until the following day. And it was really the fact that police overcharged her with murder. I don't think any jury will ever find her guilty of murder, period, because I don't think anybody will be able to prove that she wanted to kill him. But she's charged with murder. And I think when a defense attorney gets involved in a case where it appears their client has been overcharged, and likely overcharged because this was a cop, and the cops have a very nice relationship with the district attorney who gets to decide what the charges are. If there's an overcharge, and this is a serious overcharge, this is life behind bars, second-degree murder overcharge. If she in fact committed, at best, manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, you know, because she was under the influence and she, I think, did accidentally kill him, then the question is, why is the defense characterizing this as a conspiracy by the police? And my sense of that, just tactically speaking, is that the defense wants to use their strategy, their theory of this was a murder by one of the other people at the house, and they're trying to cover it up and pin it on her. But the real theory, I think, here is that if they can even get the judge to buy into the idea that it might have been someone in the house, then they're going to get access to all the police files, all their employment files, all their disciplinary records. And that's going to give Karen Read leverage, the leverage she needs to pressure the prosecution to lower the charge to manslaughter, to give her some kind of not only lower charge, but ultimately a much lesser punishment. So that's really what I think is going on here. There was an overcharge, and in a sense, there's an over defense where we're hearing things about police conspiracies.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't be on more polar opposite sides here. So let me ask you this: What's if we do go to trial, right? And I always prepare for that moment here at Court TV. What do you think the temperature is in Norfolk County, in Dedham, Massachusetts, for jurors to think that their police, are capable of this?
Well, there's a lot of support for Karen Read here, and whether people think she's just overcharged or outright innocent and had nothing to do with it, there's a lot of support for Karen Read. And here's the problem. When the prosecution overcharges someone and they blame the police for why there's an overcharge, there's a real risk that the jury's going to come back and punish the prosecution for doing that. If the jury thinks this was an accident, they're going to be angry that she was charged with murder, and that could translate into an outright not guilty as a way of, bringing democracy to the case, punishing the government for overdoing it. I can see that happening. And there's no question all the potential jurors, which will have to come from that area of Massachusetts, are watching this. They're watching all the support for Karen Read mount. And yeah, I mean, this is a country where the climate around support for police is unfortunately not good. I don't support that. I think we need good cops. And it's really, unfortunate that that is tainting this case to some extent. But I would say this, the defense has the upper hand, not because people think Karen Read is innocent, but because they think she's being unjustly prosecuted.
Kind of like Sacco and Vanzetti. Anyway, that's another story for another time. Wendy Murphy, great to see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it as always.